Now the first demonstration which we are going to do is running this particular mapping without creating a mapping task. And then what we will have to do is like we'll have to initialize these parameters at the runtime, because we don't have any parameter file created yet. So now I'll run this. Whenever I run any particular mapping having the parameters, right, then those respective tabs will be added. Usually whenever we create a simple mapping without creating a mapping task, then what will happen, it will ask us for runtime environment. When we select the runtime environment, I can directly say run, and then your mapping will start running. That is how we have done the demonstrations till now. We created a mapping task, right, once or twice, but then usually we create a mapping and we'll run that mapping by selecting the runtime environment at the execution level, and then we will do the demonstration. Here, apart from the runtime environment selection, I need to go to next. Then it will take me to the sources tab. In the sources, I do have to provide the source connection and then decide the source object parameter. Couple of parameters I need to initialize here. So what I'll do is I'll select the Oracle connection, and then source object parameter is already set to customers. Why it is set to customers? Because while creating this parameter in the mapping source object parameter, we have provided customer table as a default value, but we also checked no override at runtime. That is why I can still click on this select and then choose any other table over customers. Okay, but whenever you provide a default value, in that case that particular value will be pre-selected with that respective parameter, right? But by checking that option allow to override at runtime, I can still choose any other table or any other property against that parameter. For now I'm just keeping same, I'm just going with the customers as my source table. Okay, so this is how we initialize the source connection parameter as Oracle. I can even select it as a flat file or something, right? But then I have selected that Oracle as a type also, right? In the that is why it is only allowing me to select the Oracle related connections. I'm not seeing an option flat file or Salesforce or anything else, because in the parameter while defining the parameter I selected type as Oracle. That is why I'll be restricted to select Oracle based connections only, right? If I don't want to have that restriction, then I should not provide that or those defaulting while creating the parameter, right? These are like different scenarios basically. Okay, so now my connection is Oracle, my source object is customers, right? Means I have initialized the parameters at the source level. Now I'll click on next, which will take me to the targets tab, in which I'll have to initialize target connection and target object. Okay, now I am into my target tab. Okay, here I believe these are the default values provided, right? In the mapping we can revisit the mapping and then we can see whether these are already provided or not, right? So Oracle connection is a defaultly set as a target connection parameter, and then customers underscore 2, right, is pre-selected, or it's a default value selected in the target object parameter. Okay, so that is why we see them pre-selected, we can change them as per our requirement. Now these options can also be set at runtime. Do you want to truncate target table and load? I'll use that. Bulk load and all, right, I can use that. And then what I'll do is I'll go to my database quickly and run the query. Let's see what we have already select. This is a table we are selecting as target now. Anyways, it will get truncated and loaded as I have selected that option. So this is kind of a replica of our customer table for now. So I'll go with this. In the targets, again we have input parameters. Why? Because we need to initialize the parameters in expression, filter, transformation and all, right? So after this, initializing targets, I'll go to next, and then I'll initialize the parameters for my expression, my filter, transformation, and I will also do the field mappings manually. So let it load. Yep. Now in the filter condition parameter, click new. I'll say I want to apply filter on customer ID greater than 101. I can go for advanced as well. Click OK because I have selected completely parameterized condition. Now I do have a flexibility to have it as a simple or advanced. I can do that. I can go for anything. For now, for simplicity, I am just having this filter condition customer ID greater than 101. Click OK. You have initialized the filter condition parameter. This then created by, right? For created by, what is the current value? Okay, now the thing is, though we provide this value, will not be able to initialize, will not be able to consume it because we don't have a placeholder for created by, right? So what I would say is I'll cancel this. I'll go to target and then I'll select such a table where we have the placeholders. Ideally, I should select customer orders. Yeah, let's select this, right, where we have created by null, created date also null. Okay, so next, again we'll initialize the input parameters, the condition and all. Filter I'm providing as customer ID greater than 101. Created by, I will define here as ETL user. Validate. It is valid. Click OK. Right. For exp created date, right, for now I'll say sys date. It is valid. Click OK. Right. I'm initializing these parameters, right, or at runtime. After doing everything, right, last step I have to map the fields because I know my fields now. Why I still see customers too? Let me just check. Oh, it is still showing as customers too. Orders. 1 second, guys. 13 columns. Next. Now it is customer orders table. Okay. Now these are already initialized, and then I'll say exact field name for now, or I'll say no smart map because we have difference, right? First name, last name. Created by is map to exp created by, and then created date I'll map it as created date. So I'm done with initializing all the parameters. Now finally I can say run. Let's see. Exp created default set value portal created date. Did we load anything? We did not load anything as such. Errors. Exp created date default value set. Okay, so it has truncated the table as per the property we selected, but it did not load the data because of this exp created. Okay, let me just go back to my mapping once. Exp created date is expression. If I go here, created date. Oh, okay, this is string. We have defined this as a string, but it was still taking it. And then in the target, it definitely has to be, let me check what it is. DESC orders. It is date. Okay. The default value for port is set to error. And if I go here, if I go to the parameter panel, exp created date, there is nothing default set. Okay, let's do this one more time. Let's run this. Oracle customers. Next, target may customer 2. Okay, let's go with customer 2 for now. I'll not map them. In the next thing we will do that, right, so that we don't have any issues for this particular demonstration. Input parameters I'll select as filter condition customer ID greater than 101 for now. Click OK. I go back to my target. I'll select the truncate target as well. Next, input parameters, I've selected parameter as customer ID greater than 101. Then this expression I'll say TL user. What do we have in the current target? Let's see. Customer user, sorry, customer underscore. customers is not there at all. My bad, sorry. Okay, but for now I'll just provide a value. It is double. Okay. Then created date also I'll provide, but there is no relevance as I'm not anyways going to map it. Expression valid, click OK. Right. Fields I will map as a smart map. Everything is mapped. Now let's run this. Now same mapping we executed with a different target. Okay. Though it was not it did not load for the first time customer orders. Now we are running the same mapping with a different target. Now it is successful. Let's see the data over here. Currently we have like 5 rows in customers 2. Now if I run this query again, see only 4. So customer id greater than 101 filter has worked properly. The fields are also mapped. At the runtime we decided customer to be my source, customers underscore to be my target, right? Filter condition parameter has worked properly. Expression levels we did not, right? Because we don't have placeholders, right? So in the next transfer, next execution, we are going to handle that as well, right? So this is the first demonstration of defining or creating a parameter, completely parameterized mapping and initializing the parameters. But is this a practical option? Are we really going to create a parameterized mapping and I'll run that, and then at the runtime I'll decide my parameters to be initialized? No, this is not a practical approach. This is just for the demonstration we have done. Now second approach which we are going to do is we will have the same mapping. On top of it we'll have mapping task created and we'll initialize all these parameters in the mapping task level. So if I again go back to my explore, so this mapping configuration task I have created on the same mapping, and then let me show you how I have created this. So within this mapping configuration task, right, I have initialized the parameters in a similar way, right? So runtime environment I have. In the sources, let's see, I guess it is customers only. Yeah, it is. So Oracle connection and customers, same thing I have selected over here. In the target, again I have selected Oracle and customers too for now, right? In the input parameters, field mapping is not valid. Okay, removed. Okay, fine. Here, let's change it for now. What I will say is rather than greater than, I'll say is equal to 103. Okay, let's make some changes. In the target, have I selected truncate target table option? We haven't, right? So okay, let's go with this only. We'll insert one more record in the input parameters. If I go again, my condition is customer id is equal to 103. These are again having no relevance. In the schedule tab, I'm not providing anything else as such, right? This is default. So I'll finish it, right? And then let's run this mapping and see if that single row gets inserted from my source to target with these options, right? So if I run this, 1 row got processed. Let's see. We'll query this table again. We need to have 2 entries of 103. Let's see if we really have it. 103, and this got inserted with same values, obviously. But then we got this inserted. Okay, so second demonstration also we executed, we initialized the parameters of having customers, customer to a source and target connections, and then the filter conditions. These are catered, right? Now one more demonstration. Anyways, again, are we really going to initialize the parameters at the mapping task level? Again, not really, right? Because it is like, you're not doing any hard codings and all at the mapping level, but you're doing at that mapping task level. So there is again no point. We are still defeating our purpose of parameterization in terms of encapsulating the value. So third demonstration will use where we will actually use the parameter file, and then we'll discuss about what are the limitations, currently we have, what are the limitations earlier we had, and now how Informatica resolved them, so that you will get that history or a kind of a, because myself, right, we had like few calls with Informatica product team as well. We opened some tickets to them, right, to, you know implement a particular feature or overcome a particular thing, right? So we have practically done that, and now we are seeing that in latest releases of Informatica, some of those problems, I won't say like every problem which we logged, right, with them are resolved, but some of them are really resolved, right, in the latest editions. So now if I go to explore, and then if I go to param file and this particular MCT, let me just edit it and show you how we have how we have defined it. So in the sources, again I have selected same thing, sources, right? Because no, in same table only we will see, right? Same source table will have, and then accordingly we'll see, we can compare, right? So Oracle and customers, you can change it at your end, right, in the target. Now here we have selected Oracle connection, and then oh, here also we have selected customer. I'll select something else, customer orders will select. Okay, let's select customers too, or customer orders, because then those expressions will be unutilized, right? Truncate target option we have selected. Now we'll go to the input parameters. Okay, here I have selected filter as customer ID greater than 101, and then in place of created by. Now the thing is, filter condition is something I'm still providing at the mapping task level. Why? Because it is completely parameterized filter condition, which can't be bring from the which can't be brought from the parameter file. That is something I'll have to define at the MCT level only, right? Because is there any way I can say dollar FLT condition is equal to fill, customer ID greater than that whole condition or a query? That is not possible. So that is one limitation. First limitation of parameterization concept in Informatica Cloud is whenever you have completely parameterized filter condition, then that has to be initialized at the mapping task level, right? You can't bring it from the parameter file. But if you have simple or advanced filter condition in which your port and operator is already defined at the mapping level, only the value you want to bring it from the parameter file, that is possible. But whenever you have completely parameterized filter condition, it has to be initialized at the mapping task level. So this is one limitation. Now for created by parameter and created date parameter, rather than providing or initializing the value here, I am selecting dollar created by param. If I provide this and if I say validate, right, will it get validated? No, it will say invalid symbol reference, but that is still okay, because currently we are in process of initializing the parameters, and then we are yet to configure the parameter file and the path which we are providing into the next tab, schedule tab, right? That is why it says invalid symbol reference. It is still okay, we can still survive with it. Same goes for my created date. Now here again, rather than providing sys date or any hard coded date, I have provided dollar exp created date. If I validate, again this will not get validated, invalid symbol reference, that is still okay, cancel. Okay, now other thing is these field mappings, right? Field mapping parameters, again I'll have to initialize here itself. I'll say smart map. These also can't be defined in the parameter file. Just imagine for one parameter which is FLD map param, how you can mention, right, FLD FLD map param is equal to customer fname to first name. We can't do that, right? So these parameters like field mapping parameters also needs to be initialized at the mapping task level, right? Now I'll click next. We'll go to the schedule tab. Here if I scroll down, then I do have a section for parameter file location. So I do have two options, couple of options: local or cloud hosted. Either you want to have your parameter file available in the local folder, local as in like wherever your Linux or Windows server is, right? You have a flat file path, right? So similarly, any of the directory you can have the parameter file, right? Maybe you have a path like something something home slash ISA slash something, and then you have the subfolders like param files, src files, tgt files, scripts, archive, right? So there you can have your param files folder, and inside that you can have your parameter file. So that path you will provide over here. Okay, and then the parameter file name. For me, let me check if this is still there with me. IICS, no, it is an older path. After that I change my laptop configuration. So I'll say IICS ff location, and then do I have sample parameter file? Yes, I do have. Let me open that. So I need to change the path. Okay, so these are the parameters, and then I'll provide the path as this path and sample parameter file. I have not sample parameter file, it's a name. So that parameter file name I have provided here. I can click finish and then this will get saved. So this is first option of having parameter file available in the local. There is another option which is cloud hosted. What does that mean? I can have my parameter file hosted on AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud servers. This is a new feature provided by Informatica that you know most of the time, right? And in my current project as well, everything is AWS based. Though we need to have some Linux server for installing the secure agent. Can I install secure agent on Azure server or AWS server? No, I need to have something as a local, right? So I do have a Linux server where my secure agent lies, right? But then as per my client's policy, except that secure agent installation, I'm not going to use the Linux server for anything else. Nothing for parameter file, nothing for a flat files, everything will be AWS based. So that is why we don't have even flat file connection. We have all our AWS S3 bucket connections, right, where we are going to store our all flat files. And that is how client has defined its architecture. So in such architectures, right, we will not be able to have the local directory to place the parameter file, in which, right, we will have to use the cloud hosted, and then those connections needs to be created, right? Anyways, we would have already created those connections, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, right? So same connections can be used over here, right? So if the AWS connection is already created, that will appear in this drop down. I'll select that connection. That connection will have pre-selected bucket as in like the path where my file needs to be placed in that AWS server, right? So that particular path will be considered to have a source for my parameter file, and then I can also provide the parameter file name over here in cloud hosted. Now we will go with the local, right, where I do have this local directory on the in the Windows machine, and then this is my parameter file, right? Earlier, right, we did not even have an option to provide a parameter file directory. It was just a parameter file name. I used to provide the parameter file name, and then where I used to store my parameter file, in under which directory. So if you hover a cursor on this question mark, it says absolute path for the directory that contains parameter file, or path relative to $pm variable, excluding the parameter file name. You don't have to provide a parameter file name over here, right? If you do not enter a file path, because this is not a mandatory attribute, if you do not provide the path, then following value is used, which is apps data integration server data user parameter. So this is a default path, and earlier it was a limitation that all the parameter files needs to be placed under this directory, apps data integration server. So the last line which you see in this particular whole message, right, the following value is used, slash apps slash data integration server data user parameter. So what I'm trying to say is, earlier, I would say, when I say earlier means an year back, we had that limitation that all the parameter files needs to be local, and then those also needs to be placed under this particular directory. Where this directory is available, apps data integration server, let me show you. It will be that directory where we have installed our secure agent. So see, it was program files, Informatica Cloud, apps, data integration server, data, let me go back over here, data user parameters, apps data integration server. So I'm into apps data integration server, data. I don't see user parameter folder somehow. Okay, okay, my location is different. My bad, sorry. I I uninstalled this and now it is under HP IICS. Now apps data integration server, data, see, user parameters. Okay, this was the path. Here I used to have all my parameter files. You can even create subfolders. For example, if you operate a big or large scale project in which you may have like multiple teams, right, multiple vendors using same Informatica Cloud account, same path and all, right. So in that case, under user parameters you can create subfolders, right, as per your project name and all. And then what will happen here, you will, we did not have any option to provide the directory itself, right, just the parameter file name. So what we used to do is like we used to create the subfolders here as per the project name, and then that subfolder slash parameter file name we used to provide against the parameter file name, text box itself. So the expectation was directory is always data integration, data this, right, data and user parameters. Inside that, if you have subfolders, then provide those subfolders like slash 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 and then the parameter file. But then an year back, Informatica dissolved that constraint, that limitation, and now we can place the parameter file anywhere we want. So rather than going to this, right, now I am having my parameter file enter my own folder. But it still says that if you do not provide this path at all, then Informatica will try to read this parameter file name here. If it is not here also, that your mapping will fail, right? But then this is one, I would say this is not going to be a feature, right? This is something they fix their own bug. So yeah, this is how we have provided the parameter file directory and parameter file name over here. Okay, and finally I'll click on finish, save our mapping. For safer side, right, as we had issue pushing the date into customer orders, right, as the customer, the created date is date, okay, updated date is varchar 20 somehow. Okay, let me do one thing guys, like just to be like on a safer side, right, what I'm doing is in the input parameters, created date, right, I'll just deselect this and then I'll provide it to updated date for now. Let's see. Okay, now let's run this particular mapping task. And then yeah, sorry, I forgot to show you the values which we have initialized in the parameter files are these. Created by is infa admin, created expression created date is this, right. Source object we have selected as customer and target object this. But then, oh, okay, okay, let me check even these tables are, because this parameter file was created long back, and then I'm not sure whether we really have these tables or not, right. This mapping will fail. Customers param, oh, we don't have it, sorry, my bad, I have to change it here. Okay, anyways, we are testing a negative test case over here. This is also not present. Mapping needs to fail. It is failed, yes. Let's see why. Truncate target evaluation, delete from this, right? Okay, because it did not find that table. Let me just edit it and see the targets. If I go, did I select the truncate target table option? Yes. So see guys, now this is also one of the good test cases we executed, right? So in my sources, I had the source table, the table as customers, and the target was supposed to be customer orders. But whenever I'm running this particular mapping configuration task, right, it failed, right? Because it was not able to locate the table. Why? Because though in my source tab and target tab, I have selected customers and customer orders as my source and target tables respectively. but my parameter file is bringing something else, right? Parameter file says use customer param and customer param tgt1 as source and target, right? So at the runtime, these customers and customer order tables got, you know, overridden with these two. But because we don't have these tables, my execution got failed. Okay, so if I cancel it and if I actually go to my jobs, let's go to the failure one. Let me just close this up, unnecessary ones, right? So here go here, and then if I download a session log, let's open this. Error truncating target table, and then if I just say what was the parameters, initially itself I would have seen somewhere, or I would say these. Can I look at these? Okay, see, determining truncate for customer param tgt1, customer tgt1. See, this is, it is trying to determining truncate means it is actually taking customers param tgt1 as the target, and where it is coming from, the parameter file. So it is proved over here, and it was not able to truncate it as the table itself is not present. Okay, and then we will create those tables now and we'll rerun this. Okay, same goes for this customers param. Do I see this source? See, let's create these two tables and then we'll exactly rerun the Informatica job, right? So what I want to have is this customers param. We create this table in the database. Okay, created, right? Then I'll again create another tgt1 as customer orders. Both are created. And then let me just verify once about the field mappings. Did we have field mappings for created by created date over here? We have, because here we have defaulted to customer orders, but then we have created another table tgt as on top of our customer orders definition only. Okay, now if I go to my jobs, this failed one, let me restart this. So I'm not making any changes in the parameter file, rather I'm creating these parameters, sorry, these tables in the database. So let's see. Now it is successful. Okay, let's see. If I go to, these are just created now. Let's see. I should have, selected this as 1 is equal to 2. It created with the data. So the filter which we had, right? What was that filter? Greater than 101. Okay, so 101 is not there. And then in parameter file created by is infa-admin and created date is 6 October 2021, right? So see, we mapped it to updated date, right? Now let's change these values, right? So rather than infa-admins, here I will say ETL user and date I will change it to 10th of November. Save. I hope I have selected truncate table option. Have I? Truncate table true. Okay. I'm rerunning this. 4 rows again. Okay. Now again we'll query this. Yes. See, ETL user and 10th of November 2021, which proves that these values are actually coming from our can change the parameter file. Table, can change the tables as well, source target and all. We can do that as well, right? So these values are actually coming from the parameter file, and then created it anyways. We did not initialize that at the mapping task level, right? Here, rather than initializing them with some default value, we are saying dollar dollar. But then the source and target connections and objects, right? We actually initialize these, right? Source to have customers and target to have customer orders. But though these are the default values, in the parameter file we have something else. These are the ones. And then whatever comes from parameter file, that will have a preference, right, over what is there as a default. So customer order target table is getting, I would say, overwritten, and then this is what we are actually using, as it is coming from my parameter. Okay, so this was the third demonstration, creating a parameterized mapping and bringing possible parameters from the parameter file. We also discussed what we can bring from parameter file, what we can't. Earlier, I would say just 4 months ago, right? Just 4 months ago, I even was not having a flexibility or option to have source and target objects. So here we just pull the source objects. We can even define source connection, target connect. 4 months ago, 4 to 5 months ago, I was not even in a position to define the source target objects and source and target connections from parameter file. I had a limitation to initialize them, source target connection, source target object, at the MCT level. And just imagine how much bigger that limitation was, right? In Informatica PowerCenter, we can always create like dollar dollar src connection, dollar dollar tgt connection, right? And then initialize them from the parameter file. But that feature was completely missing in Informatica Cloud. Recently, 4 to 5 months ago, they fixed it. And now what we need to do is like, do I need to provide like dollar dollar over here? No, we will use some default source name or default target name, default source and target connections, but that can be overdone and brought something different from the parameter file. So this defining the or initializing the source target objects and source target connections from parameter file, this feature they have introduced just recently, like 4 to 5 months ago. Before that, whatever parameterization even I did, right, as a development, those are all based on initializing the parameters for these source and target properties at the mapping task level only, because of the limit. So that is why I gave you in history about what was earlier, what is now, what is fixed, right? And then how we can utilize it to the maximum extent.